this is actually just a prop because most of the stuff's in Map Info and Small World. I'm hoping they won't notice. So I'm going to be talking about how in the last 2 years, Melbourne Airport's embarked on a rapid transformation on our technologies, on our environment, and how we're delivering our projects to our stakeholders. I'm just going to run through a quick agenda first, and we're going to be playing airplane bingo. So you guys watch out for all the little puns along the way. Just to talk about where we are, where the airport's at, and then some of the choices and the business decisions we had to make along the way, how we had to change the mindset of the business in getting to where we wanted to be. And then finally, I'm going to do some demos, and then touch wood, it all works. So, our pre-flight briefing. Melbourne Airport. Everyone always goes on about Melbourne versus Sydney. And I think in this aspect, in the long run, we've got the advantage. Melbourne Airport is big. We're 2.5 times the size of Sydney. We've got plenty of room to grow. We can easily fit 2 more runways. That blue space is our expansion area, and that's all greenfields that we can build whatever we want to build. The orange area that you see down there, that's our business park. And here's a fun fact. That business park is the largest business park in Australia. We've got big names like TNT, DHL, Toll. We've even got premier names like Porsche. They have their regional headquarters based out there. That's not working. Now, APAM is a tenant and a landlord. And that means we are different things to different people. And we are responsible for reporting different things as well. For the government and the airlines, for instance, they care about the planes, they care about the taxes. So for them, aircraft movement and things like your runways, your taxiways, the aero bridges, the gates, the aircraft lighting, the navigation systems, those assets are vital, are crucial to their operations. At the same time, we also have to worry about local community, our noise modeling, our noise monitoring, our permit planning, our water quality monitoring, because these things matter to community. And so we've got to stay in touch with local government, we've got to respond, and we've got to work with local government in those aspects. But when it comes to the passengers in those planes going in and out, they care about the experience between the aerobridge and the front door. For them, it's facilities like the toilets, heating and cooling, the lifts, parking. These are the things that matter in making it a good experience in and out. Also, in the terminal, therefore, we've got the businesses that cater to these passengers. For them, we, as tenants, they care about the value that their tenancy can bring them, the rent, the facilities. And as a landlord, we've got to worry about maintaining them and always making sure that it's up and running and it's operational for their requirements. And the business park, well, that's the same extension of that tenant-landlord model. So our journey, where we are today, we've been a CAD shop for the longest time. And then that's fine, because that's how an engineering environment has always managed and run and worked in. Around 2005, we implemented Maximo. It was non-spatial, but it was more to capture all our work orders and our preventative maintenance records and our assets. And every location just had a description. So it talked about that corner of the building, or Terminal 3, or Terminal 2 departures. There was never any box or spatial representation of those areas. Around 2013, we started talking about GIS, and the idea started floating around the business, and it kicked around for a while. It took a few years, but we finally got off the ground. And around 2018, we got GIS, and the infrastructure stood up in the cloud. We stood up a portal, we started bringing in data, we started testing a few things, started building some web apps, importing a lot of our CAD data, working with the business groups on what they wanted to see, how they wanted to see it, and what they wanted to do with it. And finally, earlier this year, around March, we officially launched our enterprise solution, across the business. We got a lot of people in for training, and run them how to use Portal and what are the things they could do. And if that wasn't enough, this year we've also kicked off Maximo Spatial. So all that history of all that Maximo data, we're now tying into actual polygons and locations and geographies. We can start linking those two systems together. And if that wasn't enough, we've also implemented BIM earlier this year. And we're trying to build a federated model of our terminal, our structural and architectural model. So now whenever there's any construction, wherever it is, we've got definitive data sets to hand out to all our consultants so they can use it for their design purposes. Our success, though, in this short period of time is based on the close synergies between three pillars that help describe an asset, what I call the Holy Trinity. On the one hand, you've got BIM and CAD, and this is how an asset is designed and delivered at the end of a project. We then use GIS to represent that asset. A simple thing like a fan belt system or a light. We don't want all the intricacies of that entire system, but we just need a polygon or a dot or a line representing that asset. And then we've got Maximo that delivers the maintenance history and all the work orders associated with that asset and around that asset. And because these three teams all sit together and we're all sitting next to each other, all working together, we can best describe the asset and we can deliver a useful solution to the business. Moving on to the whole question of window or aisle, or in some cases the chicken or the fish, depending on how you go. The challenge for all businesses has always been, and this is not just airports, how do you get collaboration? How do you get systems and processes together so that people work together and grow the business, and they grow their intelligence, and they grow their information? So we went to the business, we started talking to them, and a common theme emerged. Sure, business groups all have different bits of information, and they all have different requirements, but the underlying thing is the same, the asset. Every team had a different perspective and a language, but it was always boils down to the asset. And now this is what you can do next time you're out at the airport. Say, for instance, that's Terminal 2, departure gates 8 and 6, 6 and 8, whichever you're on. And you can look at it from outside, from the window as you're walking out to your gates. You may just see that view, for instance. But if you were the bay planner, and you're planning where the next planes are coming in and what next week's load's going to look like, it matters that you need to know that D8 can only hold a 747-400. And next to it, you can't put another 747. You've got to put something else. That information is valuable to a bay planner. At the same time, if you were the HV person and you have to go fix all the floodlights, you need to know where those lines are. You need to know where the floodlights are and where they traverse under the tarmac. You could be the pavement maintenance person. And if you're planning your pavement strategy and you want to maintain your pavement, you need to know which grids affect D8. And that's important too, because you can plan using Maximo your works right here. Or you could be the line marking person, because you're going to get a call, say, from Singapore Airlines saying, hey, you know what, we've actually got a 747, another variation coming in. We need to change the stop lines at D8. We need to send someone out to do some line marking with and paint the new markers for it. So the line marking crew, they need to know where the current stop bars are, and they need to make sure they put new ones in. Or it could be a simple thing also as the geotech guys. If someone's out there doing some drilling or some core sampling, they need to know where the service tunnel is, and that's that yellow line. Because you sure don't want to drill into that and chop through all our services. And it's no different when you're inside the terminal. This is T3, near the Virgin check-in counters. It means different things to a lot of people. In the first instance, you've got the little marker there, what we call the happy face. And that captures our customer feedback. But underlying that is a Maximo location, because all our works and all our spills and trips get logged to that space. And it's important that we have that space in GIS so that we can report back on activity in that area. The Wi-Fi beacons. First thing most people do after they get in is they hook into the Wi-Fi. And it's not just for the passenger experience, it's also for internally. We need to show we have good distribution of our Wi-Fi signal across the terminal to support passengers and businesses. Vertical transport. If a lift goes down or if an escalator goes down, what are our other alternatives for egress? Are we making sure that we've got every way covered? People have easy access, easy passenger flow to their gates from the front door. Retail. Which shops are coming in? Which shops are going out? What's the distribution of our retail spaces? Do we have a good mix of food and beverage versus just the shopping experience? And what about the hoardings that go up when we're refitting things out? Because then that affects our evacuation plans and that affects how our egress is. So it matters to the terminal team and the terminal coordinators where all this is happening and what's affected. And then that entire white space that everyone walks on and no one looks at. But that white space is crucial because as a tenant, we've got to pay the government a tax. And therefore it's a mix between how much is a commercial tax and how much is retail tax. And then there's this operational space that we use as well. And it's important to get the numbers right because you don't want to pay too much tax, you don't want to pay too little. So that's how a common space, a common asset means different things to different people. And so that's why we used an enterprise-wide portal to free the data. Open it up so that everyone could access it and use it their way, what they needed it for, what their purpose was, to help tell the story that they needed to secure their funding for their project, rather than us dictate what the data was for. In the background also, we moved our figure production away from CAD into GIS so that we could start using that single source of truth. So it's easier when you update something on a map, it's published in the portal and vice versa. Now we come into the transit lounges on how we go about changing the business to adopt, because there's no point building something and if we don't have traction, it's dead in the water. What I call the transit lounge. We knew that this was going to be a game changer because the business had been used to the way of doing things for so long. But we also knew that rocking the boat was not going to help our case. So we listened to all the groups. We understood their requirements. We understood their deliverables, how they, the language they spoke, the things they talked about, and the terminology used to describe those assets. And we worked around that solution rather than enforce a whole new method of doing things. And our strategy focused on enabling the change without the requirement to change. For instance, at the end of a design phase of a project, rather than get really pretty PDFs of what the future design looks like, we asked for the issued for construction drawings, the IFCs, in its raw format, whether it was CAD, whether it was Revit, because now we've got something, rather than wait 6 months, 12 months for as-constructed drawings that may miss information. We've got something tangible we can use, we can plan. Because we're a 24/7 operation, we need to be always live with our data. Instead of asking for pretty Excel that's formatted and filtered and color-coded beautifully, give us machine-readable Excel, where the tables are the right number formats, the right string formats. And instead of a catalog of photos, for instance, give us the raw photos. Because at least from the raw photos, we can pull out the EXIFs. We can get the lats and longs. We can plot all those photos. You can imagine across smart meters, if people are taking any audits of meters and pavements and tree types and vegetation, a photo of where it is and what you're looking at is invaluable. So those small changes helped us move in a totally different direction. And I'm going to move over here. That wasn't supposed to happen. Okay, that'll do. That's no one copy my password. Hey, look at that, it works. So we have our portal up and running now. It's internal. at this stage. We've had it up and running for about a year now. With Portal, with signed users, we've got about 200 users already in the system. We are a business, as a business, we are 300, and almost everyone's on board. What we've tried to do is we've used the gallery as much as we can, and we've put a lot of content there. We've listened to a lot of the groups and tried to build little web apps specific to their groups, but this is very much the start. We've still got a long way to go with people understanding on how they can actually spin their data and what they want to do with it. So in the first instance, from a construction point of view, whenever we have any construction going on within the airport, and actually this even extends beyond the airport, what you're looking at there is what's called the OLS, the Obstruction Limitation Surface. And that means if you're building something, you cannot intersect that. And that includes even a little TV antenna on top of your house. And this is important whenever we have anyone coming to the airport to do any works. They need to understand what height they can actually get to. So we get crane permits coming in saying our crane is going to be 20 meters high. Can we intersect it? And by using just ground contours and that, our planning permitting team can directly liaise with those companies and go, well, yes, no, or you have to find an alternate method. And sometimes they have to. Not only the OLS, but we also have a PANSOPS, and this is one doozy of a data set. It's colorful too. Again, this talks about the operational approaches of all our aircraft. And again, it comes back to that planning and that regulation that these are no-go, these are no deal, these are deal breakers. You intersect this, you're in big trouble. But it frees up the data, and our entire operations team can access this, use it whenever they need to. Whenever they get a call from any agency, they can do that. We also got, get out of the way. Coming back to that way of changing, enabling change, we have an automatic system where we capture the notices of everything that's changing along the airport. Every little piece of work that happens gets flagged and is distributed in an email. But that's individual emails flying around all the time. Instead, by putting it into a map, putting it and time enabling it, you can go back and forth and you can see what, any given week, which parts of the airport are affected, what's affected, and why. So if I just clicked on that, for instance, it tells me, well, the generators are being shut down in TSP1. That's an important thing for the HV team to understand, and in case they need to pass that on into the cooling team, into the HVAC team as well. And this helps us represent in a quick summary what all's being affected and where. Because there are a lot of teams all vying for the same asset. They all want the same piece of that pie. And this way they know if they have to pick a fight, they know who to go pick the fight with. Similarly, every week, our operations planning team and the airfield maintenance team, they meet on Tuesday. They have a beautiful Excel, all cataloged, all the works that they're planning, but none of it's spatial. But by listening to them and understanding how they described it, we were able to section out the entire runway, the apron, the taxiways, into reportable chunks and link it back to the Excel. So all we have to do is now grab that Excel, do a spatial join, and you get your data here. And we can go back and forward in time to see which parts of the runway get shut down and when. And this helps from a planning perspective. That bay planner can use this and go, oh, hang on, D8's offline this week, or D8's offline next week. I can't park that 747 over there. That's how it's just small things that are helping represent the problems and work out solutions along the way. A really good example of the Holy Trinity I was talking about is T1, Terminal 1. We took acquisition of it 2-3 months ago, and we got a point cloud scanned. From that, we generated a BIM model. From that BIM model, we were able to extract good architecturals and line markings and architectural line work. From that, we can divvy up the entire terminal, every floor, into manageable spaces so that our maximum teams now have something tangible they can work with. Our retail teams know all their retail sites and all our other leases, so they can come to a site like this, look at it, pull up, for instance, there we go, pull up, for instance, a lease plan for that particular site. So they got the dimensions, they can take that and to potential clients and say, hey, here's a potential lease for you to on-sell, or here's a potential lease for you to use. But not only that, because of the simple tools in the dashboard, they can now zoom in and go, hang on, we've got a bit of open space there. Let's fit a coffee cart in. Maybe people need coffee at 10 p.m. at night if they're waiting for their flight. So they can use the markup tools, quickly draw a 2x3 coffee cart space, do a print screen, and again, take it to a potential client. And that's a simple way of coordinating activities between the retail groups, the Maximo groups. And that extends beyond the terminal as well. Because as I mentioned, the business park is one of our largest assets. And you can see from all that brown space there, there's a lot of space we can still build on. And our property team can use this. They can plan out new sites. They can look at the utilities that are underlying in that area. They can work out what sort of square meterage is required. And then they can mark it up quickly in a screenshot and send it on to potential clients. So the next toll and the next TNT, perhaps the next Ferrari, they're going to want to come out here as well. One of the strong benefits of our site is that we're connected by some good freeways. North and, well, east and south of us. But not only does this help from a everyday live scenario planning, construction coordination environment, but it also helps with that future storytelling. What's the airport going to be like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And it comes back again to that synergies between BIM and GIS. So here we're looking at our planning, precinct planning, and it was all done in BIM, and we imported it in. It's going to spin around, and it's a nice little 3D thing that works. Yeah, that works pretty well. And so we can see that, in 2023, well, we already got a new hotel coming up. That's the Hive, the Square Hotel that's coming up. Or we can start looking at, oh, well, there's the elevated road. There's going to be some more works out there. T3 is undergoing a huge change. And it lets our planning team, our precinct planning team, our terminal planning team, talk to the business on how they want the airport to change, how they want it to evolve. And it's not just therefore in the short term. We can move much further ahead too, with our ultimate precinct, which will happen over time, but how the airport will completely change an environment. Where's that train station? And yes, there is a train station. Right there. And that's where our train station is going to come in too. So using the various tools, and again, it's all straight out of the box. It's all dashboards. It's all web maps. We're helping the business stitch together the narrative to help tell their story on how they want their business to change, how they want their projects to evolve, to help the business grow. And this helps them support that decision.